Hello, welcome to part 6 of this video lecture series on the virtual desktop infrastructure. In this video, we're going to be talking in more detail about some of the components of this information system here. Specifically, we're going to be talking about your agent and your client, and the composer. So you've got your agent, your client, your composer. And then we're going to be talking about how to install and configure that connection server. And we're finally, now, as we start talking about installing and configuring the connection server, I've actually done a couple of demo videos about that. Then after that, we're going to talk about deploying and accessing those virtual desktops. So you're going to need your connection server installed. You're going to need it connected to your vCenter server, and then we can go from there. So let's talk about the agent and the client. So your Horizon agent has to be installed into any guest OS that is going to be used as a virtual desktop. It can also be installed on physical desktops to allow you to add them to your pool and manage them from your Horizon connection server. The agent uses a couple of different protocols, either the older remote desktop protocol or the newer PC over IP protocol. These are two different ways of presenting the GUI to your remote agent, to your remote client. Another thing this allows us to do, in addition to allowing remote connections and different display formats, the PC OIP format is lossless. Whereas RDP is sort of bitmap driven. The agent also allows us to do things like access client devices, like USB drives and printers. It allows us to do things like access user profiles, which is, of course, going to be very, very useful for your end users, because chances are they've got not just applications they need, but data they need to manipulate, data they may own. Another piece of this puzzle, so you've got your agent on the VM. You've got your client making the connection. One of the things that ties those things together, in addition to the connection server, the connection broker, and the connection server, I believe the other system, MS VDI, calls it a connection broker, but it's more or less the same thing. What we need is the composer, the Horizon composer. Now, this is an optional component. What it allows us to do, ideally, is take, I realize I may have already showed you this before. I may have already talked about this slide before. One of these slides before looks very familiar. Anyway, but I'll go on. What you can do with the composer, either installing it on a dedicated virtual server or a physical server or a vCenter VM, what it can do is take your pool of linked clone virtual desktops and say take them and take the linked clone virtual desktop and a customization specification and put them together and present the user a customized desktop. Say potentially complete with roaming profiles and things like that. Now, what is your Horizon composer going to need? Roughly the same kinds of things as your Horizon server. And actually, this is what this looks like, what this looks most like. So these are your Horizon composer requirements, and they are functionally identical to your connection server requirements. So this could be running on a separate machine, could be running on your vCenter, could actually be running on the connection server itself. In any case, so 1 to 4, one 4 gig chip, ideally 2 CPUs, ideally more cores, at least 4 gigs of RAM, 8 would be better, at least a fast Ethernet NIC, a gigabit or 10 gig NIC would be much better. And of course, if you need to do fun things like NIC teaming, channel bonding, etc., great. Again, you probably don't need a whole lot of disk capacity because a lot of the things that this thing will be dealing with will be stored in your NAS or your SAN. So now let's look at the installation and configuration process. This is where things get a little bit interesting. Now, I've actually also done a couple of demos about a couple of these things already. The rest of this process, I will demo soon. I'm hopefully, if everything goes well, I may actually finish this in time for everyone to watch it before Monday. But if not, I'll get to it as soon as I can. Anyway, so let's talk about installing and configuring your VMware connection server. The thing about VMware, this Horizon connection server, particularly if you're doing this in an Active Directory domain, if your connection server is actually on, your connection server is on a Windows member server, there are going to be parts of this infrastructure which are in the Active Directory and parts of it which are not, may not even know about the Active Directory. So you've got your domain controller. It's got its global catalog. It's got its member servers. It's got workstations, I mean, actual workstations. It has also got a connection server on your Windows member server. One of the things you're going to do, particularly in a Windows environment, is tell the connection server about the vCenter server. So the vCenter server knows about the host, etc. Now, you could add your ESXi host to the domain. What you will definitely do is take all the VMware infrastructure, these things that are going to be presented to your end users through the connection server. All those things need to be, the domain needs to be aware of them. Whether in terms of adding those virtual desktops to the domain or creating users and groups. You'll do a lot of this permissions control with users, groups. There might literally be an OU for all of your linked clones and for all of your full clones, so you can control your permissions appropriately. So we have this hybridized direct approach to the directory. Some things in the directory if they need to, some of them not. The next thing we'll talk about is deploying a virtual desktop. The sorts of things you need to do, the sorts of things you need to have, and so on and so forth. And that'll be actually the last video in this VMware Horizons part of the lecture series. The rest of this will be about the Microsoft virtual desktop infrastructure, the remote desktop services, and so forth. So thanks for watching.